Hey guys, I decided to make a mini series on Sass, which stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. And what it is, it's a CSS preprocessor, or you could also call it a CSS extension language. All right, and it just allows us to do certain things like use variables, use mixins, which are kind of like functions, in our CSS. And what we do is we work inside of a .scss file. All right, and then we have a compiler that will go through and compile it and then generate a regular CSS file. Okay, so the browser doesn't read the SCSS files or anything like that. We're just generating a regular CSS file. And I would definitely suggest, if you haven't used this or you haven't used Less, which is another one, I definitely suggest at least trying it, because I was really hesitant to use this at first too, because I had a really strict workflow when creating HTML5 applications. But when I did try it, I was really surprised at how easy it was to integrate into my workflow, and just how easy it was to use in general. There's really no learning curve. It's pretty simple, and there's just so much you can do. So if you go to sasslang.com/guide, it'll show you all the major features that you can use. Alright, so basically variables are probably one of the best reasons to use a preprocessor. Alright, if you want to change a color on your website or your application, and you have 25 instances of that color through multiple style sheets, that's going to be a real pain just to do that simple task. If you have variables, you can just throw that color in a variable like primary color, and then go ahead and change that, and then it will iterate throughout all your style sheets. Another really nice feature is the nesting feature or function. Basically, you can format your CSS just like your HTML. Alright, so in this example we have a navigation or a nav element, and then we're nesting inside of it the unordered list, the list item, and the link. Alright, so this is pretty much how you would have it set up in your HTML as well. So it's really nice for organization and just keeping everything really clean. Alright, so partials, basically when you use Sass you deal with SCSS files. Alright, and you can break these up into sub files and then just use the import directive to bring them all into one style sheet. Alright, so let's say you have a bunch of different buttons on your site. Okay, they're all styled differently. You might create an underscore buttons.scss file. Alright, you may have a navigation SCSS file. Alright, now you can use import and then bring them all into, let's say, a main.scss file, and then use your compiler to generate a main.css file, which will include all the styles from all your partials. Alright, and we'll do that later on. Mixins, also awesome. Basically, they're CSS functions. You basically use the syntax @mixin and then a name, give it a name, in this case border radius, and you can even have parameters. Alright, so we have a parameter of radius which will take whatever, 5 pixels, 10 pixels, and in this particular mixin what we're doing is setting the border radius, but we're including all these vendor prefix versions as well. So you don't have to write all that out in your CSS. You can basically just do this. Okay, you can do include and then the name of the mixin, and then plug in your parameter, in this case 10 pixels. And you can have multiple parameters, you can have default values, so really helpful. Alright, so extending and inheritance. Basically, if you have experience with object-oriented programming, then you should have no problems understanding this. Basically, in this example, we have a class called message. It has a border, padding, and a color. Alright, and then here we have a class called success, and we're going to say extend message. So basically we're grabbing all of this and putting it into the success class, and then we're just going to change the border color to green. and same thing for error and warning. Alright, so that's very helpful. Operators, you can do all kinds of math. You can do percentages and division, multiplication, things like that. And another thing that's not on here is you can actually use if statements. Alright, you can have if statements, you can use loops, you can use for loops, each loops. There's just a ton that you can do. So like I said, if you've been hesitant to try something like this, I would definitely encourage you to go ahead and do it. We're gonna get this up and running. Basically, Sass runs on the Ruby programming language, so you'll need to install that. And if you're using Windows like I am, then the easiest way to install Ruby is to use something called Ruby Installer. So let's go ahead and grab that. So I think it's at rubyinstaller.org. Yeah, so you want to click download, and there's two things we're going to download. We want the actual Ruby language, which is right here. I have the 64-bit version, so I'm going to download that. And there's also something called the dev kit, or the development kit, and that's going to allow us to do certain things in the command line, such as install Ruby gems, things like that. So you want to get that as well. But first we'll install the actual Ruby. Okay, so the default directory for me is going to be Ruby 20064, and you want to add Ruby executables to your path environmental variable. So check that, and also check associate RB and RBW files. Okay, so we'll install that, and that's it. Ruby's now installed. So let's go ahead and grab the development kit. I'm 64 bits, so I'm going to get this one. And that's going to download. And I should also mention you need to have Java installed. So you probably have that, but if you don't, just download Java. And also Adobe Air. But I believe when we go to install Ruby, when we go to install Scout, which is the compiler tool, it'll give you the option to install Adobe Air. So let's go ahead and run that. Sorry about that. So what we need to do is we're going to extract the dev kit, and you want a folder to extract it to. And what I usually do is go to my C drive and create a new folder called dev kit. Alright, so that's where I'm going to extract it. Alright, so now that that's done, you want to make sure that those files are in there. So it should look like this. Alright, so now we have Ruby installed, and we also have the dev kit installed. So what we need to do now is run a couple commands. So we want to go to the start menu, and then in the search box, cmd, enter. Alright, so what we want to do is navigate to the dev kit directory. So I'm going to say cd, and I want to go to my C drive, and then cd dev kit. Alright, and I'm going to run ruby dk.rb init. Alright, so that's the initializer. Now we need to run ruby dk.rb install. Alright, I actually had DevKit. I had this installed at one point, so you might see something different here. Now what we need to do is make sure that the Ruby environment is using DevKit correctly. Alright, we can do that with gem install JSON platform equals Ruby. Alright, so that's good. Now we just want to install Sass. So gem install Sass. So Sass is now successfully installed. Okay, so we can go ahead and start to create our application or website, whatever you want to call it, and then we can compile from the command line. But I want to do something a little easier, and I want to use a tool called Scout. Let's see, Scout, I'm not exactly sure of the website. This is so I apologize for this slow machine. It's a virtual machine. Alright, so the URL is mhs.github.io/scoutapp. Alright, and we want to click download for Windows. And I will be making a video for how to get this all set up in with a Mac as well. Alright, so let's see. Add shortcut, that's fine. Installation location is program files, that looks good. Alright, so this is the Scout interface. It kept my old project. I'm going to remove this. Alright, so you should see this. Before we do anything here, we need to create our project folder, which you can create anywhere. I'm just going to go to my C drive and create a new folder called projects, and then create a new folder called my project. Alright, and then this will be your website or your application structure. So I'm going to create a CSS folder. We want to create an SCSS folder, and that's what we'll be working in. And then we'll create a JavaScript folder and an images folder. Alright, so now we'll go back to Scout and click on this little plus sign, and you want to choose the project folder you just created. Okay, so my project. And then you want to choose the directories. The input folder is going to be your SCSS folder. And then the output is going to be where the generated CSS files go, which will be CSS. And we can also choose our JavaScript folder and our images folder. Alright, and then down here you can have development mode or production mode. Basically, development is just going to keep it's going to have comments in the CSS files, stuff like that. Production will wipe all those out. And then we can choose to have it compacted or compressed or expanded, which I'm going to keep. Alright, so I'm just going to leave it at the default. And then we want to go and click this little play icon. And we should get an error. So basically, we got this error because there's nothing to compile. Alright, now if you got an error, a pop-up message that says something about argument error 3214 or something like that, then you need to install Java. Alright, that's usually what that means, is that you don't have Java installed or it can't find it. So make sure you do that. Now what we're going to do is create our HTML file. And we're going to create our main SCSS file, which, whoops, not a folder. Sorry about that. We want to create a new text document called main.scss. Alright, so now let's open that up. I'm going to use Notepad++. Okay, so I'm going to open. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to also open the HTML file. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a basic structure. So I'm going to use the HTML5 doc type. say my Sass project. Alright, and we want to link our style sheet, which we didn't create yet. We're actually going to let Scout generate it, but we just want to set a link to it. So link rel style sheet href is going to go to css slash, and we're going to call it, actually we'll leave it at main.css, not scss, css. Okay, so we'll save that. Now what I want to do is go back into Scout and click play. Alright, so right now you can see how it's changed to the stop. Alright, so if we want to stop compiling, we can click that. But right now, no matter what we do, if we create SCSS files and save them, they'll automatically be compiled and then put into the CSS file. Alright, so basically we have main.css. Let's go ahead and say body, and we'll say background, and we'll give it a black background. Okay, so if I save that, you can see right here it says change detected at main.scss. So it then overwrote the main.css. So if we go and open up CSS main, you can see that it's in there, and we also have the comment that says where the line is. Alright, that's because we have it in development mode. So if we open up index in a browser, just close this. If we open up index, it has a black background. Alright, and we can change inside of our SCSS file. We'll change it to red. Save. And you can see that it updates it in real time. You don't have to keep pressing compile. Alright, when you're done, you can click stop. Alright, and then it'll stop generating changes. And then when you're ready to start developing again, then just come in here, press play. Alright, so that's the only real difference in your workflow, is that at the beginning and end of your development session, you just want to click play and stop in Scout. Alright, so now I want to demonstrate some of the features, and we'll start with variables. Actually, you know what? We'll start with partials. So in our SCSS file, we have a main.scss. You don't want to just keep one and that's it, because that kind of defeats one of the purposes of using a preprocessor. Alright, so we want to create different folders. Alright, so what I usually do is I'll call one folder modules. I'll call another one base. And then maybe layout. Alright, so in base, I will have an underscore base dot SCSS. Now the reason for the underscore is that if I don't have that underscore, when Scout goes to compile our CSS, it's going to also generate a base.css file, and I don't want that. The only file I want it to create is main.css. Alright, so you need to have the underscore. So this will basically be all my base, like paragraphs, headings, things like that, just the base styles. And I may also have a reset file. Alright, so that would be if you use like maybe the Eric Myers reset file or something like that, you could put in there. So that's it for now for base. For layout, I do something like header, and footer, so all the styles for the header and footer will go there. Modules, okay, so in modules I do like buttons, see, sometimes I'll use a blocks, and that'll be like, you know, sidebar blocks, different versions, different may have a primary box and a secondary color box, things like that. And then maybe like components. Okay, so in here I'd put like alerts, progress bars, things like that. And you usually would have this kind of structure with an application, not just a HTML website. You don't need all this stuff just to build a small website. This is more for application stuff. And then I'd have a typography .scss, and this should have an underscore. Okay, and this would be like my headings, special heading classes, different colors, things like that. All right, and then in our main, go back to our main one, and I won't have any styles in here at all. It will be all imports. So we would have like import, say import, what do we have? Base / base. Actually, yeah. Oh, another one that is very important inside of base that I usually have is variables. Variables and also mixins. Okay, so we'll include those. Basically, variables I would do first, and then mixins, and then base, and what else? Reset would go before base. Actually, reset would go. Nah, reset would go right here. Alright, and even though that the file names have underscores, actually, yeah, we should include those as well. I'm not sure if we should, but let's just give it a shot. Okay, so that's all our base files. Next we would have, what do we have? Layout. And then we would have our modules. So buttons. We should probably do typography. So buttons, blocks. Is that all of them? And components. Alright, so we're importing all these into this file, so the browser doesn't make any extra HTTP requests for these. That's why it's okay to do this. If you were to import all these in a regular CSS file, then you may see some performance issues. It's just nice to really compartmentalize your different aspects of your application or your website. Alright, so let's just add a little bit of HTML. We're not going to build an actual website. I just want to just kind of demonstrate some stuff here. So let's go ahead and create a div container. And we'll put in a header. So we'll call this my project. Alright, and then maybe have our navigation. That's another one that I use a lot, is navigation .scss. or nav. And in here we'll have a UL. Oops. Alright, and then maybe have a section. And then a footer. Alright. So reload. There's our awesome website. So let's start with the container. We'll actually start with the body. So basically, where's my I want to use base. Okay, I want to go to my base file, and that's where I'm going to put my main body styles. Alright, so font, family, let's use Georgia. Okay, font size, we'll say 14 pixels, not font size. Alright, and then color, we'll do like a really dark gray. Line height. Alright, and then we'll do the container. (960 pixels), margin auto, and overflow auto. And for the body, let's do a background of light gray. Container, we'll also give a border. Alright. Let's see, the container, oh, this should be an ID. Alright, so the container, well, let's give a background of white. We can give it a border radius of 5 pixels, and that's good. Say the header, give it a background, we'll say 003 D99, which is a bluish color, and then the font color will be white. Okay, let's actually add a reset. So I'm going to open up, actually, you know what, I want to pull my project up over here. Okay, so let's open up base, reset, and I'm just going to do a global reset here. Alright, and then in base, I'm going to make my header have a height of 90 pixels. Okay. The header H1, say padding from the top 20 pixels, top, right, bottom, and left. And let's move the whole container down a little bit. So the margin, we'll do 20 pixels auto. Alright, and the navigation, okay, we'll give it a height of 30 pixels and a background of black, color white. Okay, and then we'll do the nav li. And back in the reset file, I'm also going to put list style none. Okay, so we'll float to the left. Padding 0. We'll do 20, 20, and then the links should be white. What am I doing? I get ahead of myself. Alright. So there's our navigation. I realize it doesn't look very good, but just doing this real quick. Pixels. Let's give section a minimum height 200 pixels, and then footer text align center. Alright. Okay, so good enough for what we need to do here. I realize it's very ugly. So basically, let's look at using variables. Alright, so what I'll do is go into my variables SCSS file, and I'm going to let's set a header, not a header, let's set a primary color, and I want to set that to that blue, which is in the header, so it's right here. I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to replace this with primary color, and then go ahead and put that in here. Alright, so if I save, that should now still be the same. Alright, and then secondary color, we'll do black. Actually, we'll do like a dark gray. And we'll put that in for our navigation. Alright. Now you can see that if I misspell a variable here and save it, it'll actually give us the error and tell us the line number, which is really cool. Alright, so let's say the footer, let's go, I'm going to break this up and put it into our files afterwards that we created, our footer and header files and things like that. So footer, I'm going to do padding 20 pixels, background, background will be primary color. Okay, and text will be white. Okay, so let's break these up, and basically I'm also going to create a navigation in my layout folder. Call it nav.scss. Alright, make sure we go and include that here. Alright, and then I'm going to grab all the navigation CSS. Okay, and then we'll grab the header stuff. Put that inside header. Save, and then go back to base and get the footer. Okay, put that in footer. Alright, now if I save and we go back and reload, okay, we have an issue here. Invalid CSS after layout nav. What did I do here? Import layout / nav. Oh, I don't have a semicolon. Alright. So if we want to change the main, let's just say we have a bunch of pages with this color everywhere. Alright, so instead of having to just go and change every single instance, we can go into variables and say primary color, and let's just say red. Alright, so that's going to change everything to red. Alright, so that to me is well worth the extra workflow, which basically isn't much. Maybe running the Scout program and breaking your CSS up into different files is probably the only extra work that you're going to do. And breaking them up into these files is actually more helpful because everything's compartmentalized and you know where everything is. You know that if you want to add whatever, if you want to change the border in your header, you know where exactly to go for that. You know it's going to be right in here. Alright, so huge advantage. So I want to demonstrate a mixin now. Basically, let's go to base, and we have our border radius. Just doing this you shouldn't do that. You should also include the vendor prefix, at least WebKit and Moz. You want your application or your website to look good in all browsers. So basically, instead of having to write this, it'd be better to just say include border radius, and we'll say 10 pixels. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just grab these 3 lines, cut them out, and go into my mixins, which is in the base. And I can just say mixin border radius and plug in radius, and then just change all this to radius. Alright, so that's a lot cleaner. If we go back to base, okay, so let's save this and see if make sure it still works, which it doesn't. Expected variable. Oh, you know what? I'm using the wrong. This needs to be. No, that's right. That's right, isn't it? No, it's not right. This is actually less syntax. The other popular CSS preprocessor called less. And I would suggest picking one and sticking to it, or you do this, what I just did, all the time. Alright, so there we go. Now it's 10 pixels. Now we can also set a default. Alright, so in our mixin, let's say the default 5 pixels, and save, and then go back to base and just say border radius. Okay, no parameters at all, and save, and then reload, and you can see now we have a default of 5 pixels. Alright, so we're running out of time here. Basically, the last thing I want to show you is how to nest objects, or nest elements, and we can do that in the header. Okay, basically we don't need to do this here. We can use Sass to take this and put it right in here, but not have the header, just H1. Alright, so that's going to give us the same result as what we just had. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it. Let's take a look at the style sheet that's been generated. So CSS, main CSS, and you can see that it's heavily commented, but it's all just standard CSS. If we look for, let's see, the header color, where's the header? Right here, background red. Alright, so there's no variables or anything, it's just plain old CSS. We can take this application, this website, and totally delete the SCSS files, and it'll be fine because it's just using what was generated. Alright, so that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to have some more tutorials on this, on Sass. We'll build an actual project rather than just these little tutorials. So please subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.